18 through 23. Now, where remission of these is, there is no more offering of sin. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Hamashiach, by a new and living way which he has consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh, and having an high priest over the house of the Most High. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance and faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. We were just talking about that. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised this. Okay, so now you can see who the high priest is, but we're going to give more indications of that. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 7. Hebrews chapter 7, verse 12. Hebrews chapter 7, verse 12, and it reads, for the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law. Now, don't let that trip you up and say, wait a minute, the Most High don't change. It says it there in Hosea 4:6. 6:4 was one of those two. I always switch them up. It's not saying that the Most High has changed. It's saying that the priesthood is still there, but it's changed from the Levites to whom? To Hamashiach. In the same way the kingship has from David and the line through Judah, it still went through Judah and everything, but it's now Hamashiach. Right? So don't let it think that something has been a drastic change where it's no longer those things. It's just represented in a different way. And we'll see that as we keep reading. Let's go down to what verse I want to go to, 14 and 15. It says, for it is evident that our Adonai sprang out of Judah. This is talking about Hamashiach. For it is evident that our Adonai sprang out of Judah, of which tribe Moses spoke nothing concerning priesthood. And it is yet far more evident, for that after the similitude of Melchizedek, there ariseth another priest. Verse 21. Let's skip down to 21 and read 21 through 28. Stay with me, everybody. For the priests were made without an oath, but this with an oath, by him that said unto him, the Most High swear and will not repent. He won't turn around from what he's saying. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. By so much was Yahushua made a surety of a better testament. It's explaining it now, but you got to be in the spirit to understand it. And they truly were many priests because they were not suffered or allowed to continue by reason of death. Because they died off. So they weren't, able to continue. They were not allowed, or suffered means allowed in this sense. Verse 24, but this man, because he continued forever, has an unchangeable priesthood. Wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come into the Most High power by him. We read that. We opened up the scripture in Colossians 3:17. Seeing he ever liveth to make intercessions for them. For such a high priest became us, who is holy, set apart, harmless, undefiled, separated from those sinners, and made higher than the heaven, who needeth not daily, as those high priests, to offer up sacrifice, first for his own sins, and then for the people's. Remember that? They did the tabernacle, they did the sanctuary, then they did their own sins, and they did the congregation. That is referring back to what we just read. first for his own sins and then for the people's. For this he did once when he offered up himself. For the law, this is speaking of the sacrificial law, for the sacrificial law, or for the law maketh men high priests, which have infirmity. But the word of the oath, which was since the law, maketh the Son, who is consecrated forevermore, because he don't die. You see, I hope you all get that. You may have to read this one, make a little star on the side of it, because it really gives a breakdown, a full breakdown on, even though we acknowledge sacrifices and why they did them then, being that shadow, and knows why our forefathers from started making the Levites all the way to the Levites who were no more, or they didn't have the same effect until Hamashiach. We can see why we still acknowledge the days that we were instructed to, but the sacrifices, we are to set our minds and our hearts and our soul entirely upon the sacrifice that Hamashiach did whenever we read about a goat, lamb, or a bullock in the sacrifice, because he completed it. And he don't die. And he's right there. Like the priests have to go back to the Holy of Holies, back where the ark was. We're going to get into that a little in a moment. And they had to, do the atonement process. Hamashiach is right there with his Father. He's back there with the Holy of Holies. So it's the same thing happening. It's just more perfect than it ever was back then, when they were just going through the rehearsals, but being committed and actually slaughtering lambs and goats. So let's keep going. Hope you all get understanding of that. You may have to read it a couple more times just to get it. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 11 through 15. Hebrews chapter 9, 11 through 15, and it reads, But Hamashiach being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in one place into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. That's powerful. Verse 13. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctified to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Hamashiach, who through the external or eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to the Most High, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living power? That's a question. Okay, how much more so purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living power? Verse 15. And for this cause he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. He just completed it. Keep your finger on Hebrews 9, because we're going to come back to this, but we're going to go to other scriptures that are precepts to what we're reading now. And again, we spend time on this because it's important to see, so we really get the full effect of atonement and how Hamashiach and how our eyes should be, fixed on that, as our forefathers' eyes were fixed on the priest when they came there, because he is our high priest. Okay, let's go to Matthew 26. Keep your finger there. And Matthew 26, 27, 28. And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, New Covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sin. So we see that's what we're talking about. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 9 and go to verses 18 through, I think, 22. Yeah, 22. Hebrews chapter 9, 18 through 22. And it reads, whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood, is referring back to what we just left in Matthew. Whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood, for when Moshe had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the testament which the Most High has enjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. Verse 22, and almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission of sins, or no remission. So again, you get more insight on that. Let's go back to Exodus 24, verses 6 through 8. It reads, and Moses took half of the blood and put it in basin, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that the Most High has said we will do, and be obedient. Y'all remember this? This is when the contract was signed, the covenant. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant, which Yahweh has made with you concerning all these words. That's why we still in that. That's beautiful. Okay, Hebrew 9, 24 through 26. It says, this is Hebrews chapter 9, verses 24 through 26. For Hamashiach is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of the Most High for us. Remember, I was paraphrasing that a minute ago? Here it is written. Verse 25. Nor yet that he should offer himself often, as a high priest entered into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world has he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. That's why. And if someone has a definition of atonement from any source, any legitimate source, so go ahead, bring it out.
I have atonement, but you want affliction first?
No, it's okay. We can go with atonement first. It doesn't have to go in that order.
Okay. I went to the etymology dictionary, so this is from 1510, the year 1510. And it says, this is Shemaiah 1. This is the definition: condition of being at one with others, a sense now obsolete, from atone plus ment. The theological meaning, reconciliation of man with God through the life, passion, and death of Christ, is from 1520s. That of satisfaction or reparation for wrong or injury expropriation of an offended party is from 1610. 1610. That's what I have for atonement.
Appreciate that, the water Torah. And you notice when you're reading those things, that's why when we hear those laws and we see where we're falling short, and that's when that atonement, because now you have to come, because remember the covenant we just read about, where we say all these things we'll do, and then we find out that, Most High is keeping his end of the bargain. We're not. That is now like the definition of the etymology part he brought out. What was the first part you said? Like coming back. What was that? I'm not gonna paraphrase. What did you say on there? Like bring this back.
It says condition of being at one. Condition of
there we go. That's it right there. Of being at one, and then being at one, you got to be back to where we both are in the same mind and the same purposes and things of that nature, like the Father and the Son are and so forth, being a cud. Now, check this. This is a different biblical definition for atonement. And this is from just the back of my little Bible. I got a little dictionary back there. And it says, it starts off the same as Shema 1's definition, the etymology dictionary, saying a setting at one of those who before were at variance, as applied to the revelation between the Most High and man. It was effected through the death of Hamashiach upon the cross, hung from a tree. The word is also used for the act which produces this reconciliation. There's that word, as well as the satisfaction or payment given for wrongdoing, including injury. And it goes into our sacrifices and some common words that the same is propitiation and reconciliation. So that's what I have there as well. This is one I sent to you about affliction. This comes from the Webster's College Dictionary, an old edition. It says affliction, an afflicted condition, pain, suffering, anything causing pain or distress or calamity. I'm going to pause there for a second. Remember we were talking about first when I was saying like the soul, you have the flesh, and then you have the spirit that makes up the soul. When you fast, you are affecting the physical. You are afflicting the physical. The spirit it should be some type of distress or some type of pain, and that is coming from recognizing that you have an atonement to make because you have not been keeping the covenant as you should. And that's why some people say, no, I keep all the laws. That's why it's important on the first part of this month to read all of them. So all those people can recognize that, hey, no, you're not. Let's just be honest. But anyway, let's keep reading the definition. It has synonyms. Affliction implies pain, suffering, or distress imposed by illness, loss, or misfortune. And somebody going through a trial, that suggests suffering that tries one's endurance, but in a weaker sense refers to annoyance that tries one's patience. Tribulation describes severe affliction continuing over a long and trying period. Notice the difference. Misfortune is applied to circumstances or events involving adverse fortune and to the suffering or distress occasioned by it. Okay, so that just gives you a sense of the affliction, but I just wanted to share those with you so you can see when we are being afflicted, it's not like a lot of the afflictions that Israelites have been going through all the years. Those have been put on us by our failure to keep the promises that we made in the covenant, and we're suffering the curses, and they hurt in a whole lot of ways, both to our spirits and to our physical bodies, to our flesh. but we're talking about specifically the ones that we do self-evaluation and self-affliction because of where we know we fell short and that we do have some recompense, or we do have a mediator for us. Back then they had the high priest who came to Tabernacles. Now we have the high priest that is sitting in the heavens. We already read about that. So I wanted to read that, but let's get into this part here real quick. And this has to do with the Hebrew words. Let's see. Let me get to the right page. There we go. Of Kippur. You have a couple of words, anu. That's like the afflictions, anu. It's 6031, anu, and 6035. I mean, because it's like being bowed down in a bowed down state when you're looking at afflictions, right? Being humble by fasting. When you affecting the, you affect the spirit as well but the body is the first one to feel it and be yelling to your spirit to do something about it. So fasting is almost like both, and being weak, being in humiliation, and of course, like when an enemy afflicts us, he humiliates us for his own laughter and joy, and do it in front of others. They've been doing that public humiliation and afflictions on the slave plantations for hundreds of years, where they wouldn't just chastise or afflict a Negro in private. They would make it a public spectacle. So the humiliation would be there, and also the fear of the others to be obedient to their masters. So, but anyway, all those are anah, which is that word that is speaking of. Now I'm going to read about Kippur, which we know Yom Kippur was what they usually say, Day of Atonement. Yom meaning day, Kippur meaning atonement. And the verb is kappir, which is to cover over. And all this is going to make sense in a second, to cover over. I think I went over before, but I didn't go to this part as I'm going to do now. It's like to cover over something. In this case, we're talking about covering over our sins, right? That, hey, we did, so we need some covering with that, and to get back into that oneness that the etymology word brought out. So that's one form of it. And we also have KAPPARAYUM, which is what we are talking about. That is like the atonement, and that's a plural word. It's an abstract plural, and that is what we usually refer to as the Day of Atonement, which is Yom KAPPARAYUM. But some of them have shortened it to Yom Kippur. But here is the one I wanted to get to, because this one has it's kaprut, and it's like using KAPPARAYUM, but it has a ta at the end, and it is. But check this out; it's a propitiatory. All right, but check out what I'm about to read to you, because it has a lot to do with covering. And here we go. I'm just going to read it, and I can send you a picture of this later as well. Okay, this is coming from a lot of places we just read: Exodus 25, 26, Numbers 7, and so forth. But here it goes. It says, "It was a slab of gold, 2.5 cubits by 1.5 cubits, placed on top of the ark of the testimony. On it, and a part of it, were 2 golden cherubim facing each other, whose outstretched wings came together above and constituted the throne of Yahweh. When the high priest entered the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement, it was necessary that this highest place of atonement should be enveloped in a cloud of incense. The blood of the sin offering of the atonement was then sprinkled on the face of and 7 times before it. The temple proper, as distinguished from porch, etc., was called HaKapparim. So anyway, the reason why I read that, notice how, I don't know if y'all know, let's just read what it's talking about in the scriptures, and then you'll know, because that's given what I was just reading from is from the lexicon, from the BDB lexicon, Hebrew to English lexicon, and they gave that. But let's see it in scriptures. Let's go to the book of Exodus, chapter 25. This is Exodus 25, verse 16. And thou shalt put unto the ark the testimony which I shall give thee. Thou shalt put into the ark the testimony which I shall give thee. And thou shalt make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and 1.5 cubits the breadth thereof. This is solid pure gold. And thou shalt make 2 cherubim of gold, of beaten work shalt thou make them in the 2 ends of the mercy seat, and make 1 cherub on the one end and the other cherub on the other end, even of the mercy seat shall you make the cherubims on 2 ends thereof. And the cherubims shall stretch forth their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings. And their faces shall look one to another toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And thou shalt put the mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark thou shalt place the testimony that I shall give thee. And there I will meet with you, and I will commune with you from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim which are upon the ark of the testimony of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. Okay, so I have it on my phone. My little, it's been on for years. My screensaver on my phone. It has a picture of the Ark of the Covenant, Ark of the Testimony, and it has that cherub, that ark with the stars, and it has the mercy seat that sits on top. It's basically the lid. It's the cover. But it's amazing. That has a lot to do with the Day of Atonement, because again, that word kappur is meaning to cover, to be a propitiatory. Okay, so I hope y'all see it. I don't want to just keep rolling on that, but just because I find it very interesting, I hope you find it somewhat interesting. When he came back, that's when they go to the Holy of the Holies, when the high priest, is the only one to go back there. And it's amazing that the high priest that we have now, the only one that's there is our Hamashiach. And it's wonderful because of what we're going to read in a minute, because why he's such a perfect high priest for us. It's amazing. John 8:32 through 36 says, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Then answered him, we be Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, you shall be made free? Yahushua answered them, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth forever. You catch that? We were talking about before about how the priests, those servants, when they was doing their work, they didn't abide there forever. They had another one came, a successor, but Hamashiach, he's letting them know the servant, the Son is abiding there forever. Verse 36, if the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. So when those sins and when those things that he does, they are taken care of by him, it's just a beautiful thing. You shall be free indeed. Let's go to talk about fasting. Because, again, fasting is what we're going to be doing. I know it's probably going to be some quick messages sent out before we start the fast on the 5th at sunset, and, guiding people on how they may want to prepare, how to drink water, fluids, fruit, and so forth. It's going to be brothers and sisters concerned to help one another out on, doing a proper fast. But let's hear what the scriptures say about the fast real quick. Let's go to Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6, 15 through 18. Verse 15, it says, "But if you forgive not men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." Let's see that in the Apocrypha. I'm going to go there real quick. It's in Sirach, Ecclesiasticus, chapter 28, verse 1 and 2. And we're going to come back to Matthew chapter 6. I just want to precept that part about your trespass. If you're not willing to forgive, it's really people that are hung up on not forgiving people. I am thankful that I've never had that problem, but I do recognize it is very, very difficult for some people to do. You know what I'm saying? They say, I can forgive, but I can't forgive her. No. They just can't. But this scripture is for you. Because if you want an atonement, if you want, and have a covering for yours, but you're not willing to cover someone else's, it's problematic. So anyway, this one is Ecclesiasticus, which is Sirach chapter 28, verse 1 and 2. It says, "He that revengeth shall find vengeance from the Most High, and he will surely keep his sins in remembrance." That's pretty heavy. Verse 2, "Forgive your neighbor the hurt that he has done unto you, so shall your sins also be forgiven when you pray, when thou prayest." So we see that that's important, that we do those things and not just be looking out for ourselves, because if we think we're doing everything right, but yet we got it to a point that we're not forgiving our brother, the scriptures already answered what's going to happen on that. So back to Matthew chapter 6, verse 16. I'm going to read 15 again. I'm going to keep going. Verse 15, "But if you forgive not men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Moreover, when you fast," that's what we're getting into, "when you fast, be not as the hypocrites of a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces that they may appear unto men to fast. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward." You've seen those too. They walk around, they want to look on and say, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" "Oh, I'm fasting. Oh. It's like, come on, man. You just step out of it. Don't be like the hypocrites, because they like to do that. They like to look and play the part that they are really doing something significant. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Verse 17, "But thou, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that thou appear not unto men to fast." So you don't give that appearance that you're fasting, "but unto your Father which is in secret, and your Father which seeth in secret shall reward you openly." Do it in secret, he going to give you a reward that everybody going to see. Oh, all right. So enough on that one there. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 58, talking about fasting. It's a precept to that. Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58, 1 through 11 says, "Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins." That's why reading those commandments are so important. You got to know it. Verse 2, "Yet they seek me daily, and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness and forsook not the ordinance of their power. They ask of me the ordinances of justice. They take delight in approaching to the Most High. That's where you should be. Wherefore have we fasted, say they, and they see us not. Wherefore have we afflicted our soul, and thou takest no knowledge? Behold, in the day of your fast you find pleasure and exact all of your labors. Behold, you fast for strife and debate, and to smite with the fist of wickedness. You shall not fast as you do this day, to make your voice to be heard on high. Is it such a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush, and to spread sackcloth and ashes beneath him? Wilt thou call this a fast, and an acceptable day to the Most High? Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke? Is it not to deal your bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out into your house? When thou seest the naked, that thou covered him, and that thou hide not yourself from your own flesh? Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of Yahweh shall be your reward. Then shalt thou call, and the Most High shall answer. Then shall cry, and he shall say, Here I am. If thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke, the putting forth of the finger, and speaking vanity, and if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity, and thy darkness be as the noonday. Last verse 11. And the Most High shall guide thee continually, and satisfy your soul in times of drought, and make fat your bones. And thou shalt be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters fail not. Let's go to the book of Numbers, 5 through 8. Numbers 5, 5 through 8. Numbers chapter 5, 5 through 8 reads, And the Most High Yahweh spoken to Moshe, saying, Speaking to the children of Israel, when a man or woman shall commit any sin that men commit, to do a trespass against the Most High, and that person be guilty, then they shall confess their sin which they have done, and he shall recompense his trespass with the principal thereof, and add unto it the fifth part thereof, and give it unto him against whom he has trespassed. But if the man has no kinsman to recompense the trespass unto, let the trespass be recompensed unto the Most High, even the priest, beside the ram of atonement, whereby an atonement shall be made for him. There's just an extra provision for those who, when they do wrong and they don't have anyone to give that recompense back to who they have trespassed, then they can bring that during the Day of Atonement and offering. Okay, so let's go to Romans chapter 5. This explains it. Romans chapter 5, verses 8 through 11. But the Most High commended it, his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Hamashiach died for us. much more then, being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to the Most High by the death of his Son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And not only so, but we also joy in the Most High through Mashiach Yahushua, by whom we have now received the atonement. That's our joy, that we receive that atonement through the Mashiach. That's the Christ atonement, Mashiach atonement. We start off in Colossians. We might as well end on Colossians. Colossians chapter 1. Colossians chapter 1, 12 through 14. Giving thanks unto the Father, which has made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, whom has delivered us from the power of darkness and has translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Right? Verse 14. In whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins. We have to remember this on Day of Atonement. All right? Let's skip down to verse 19 and go to 24. Verse 19 says, for it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell, and having made peace through the blood of his death, our cross, by him to reconcile all things unto himself. By him, I say, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven. And you that were sometimes alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, that's our lost brothers and sisters right there, yet now hath he reconciled in the body of his flesh through death, to present you holy and unblameable and unreprovable in his sight. If you continue in the faith grounded and settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel, which you have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Saul, or Paul, am made a minister. Verse 24, who now rejoice in my suffering for you, to fill up that which is behind the afflictions of Christ, Hamashiach, in my flesh, for his body's sake, which is the congregation of the church. That's heavy. Last verse is going to come from 1 John, just a couple pages over, and then we will close it out. 1 John chapter 5, verse 3 says, for this is the love of the Most High, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. It always comes down to that, doesn't it? Verse 6 through 8. This is he that came by water and blood, even Yahushua HaMashiach, not by water only, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit that beareth witness, because the Spirit is truth. Verse 7, for there are three that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit, and these three are one. You know what that means. Verse 8, and there are three spirits that bear witnesses on earth, the Spirit and the water and the blood, and these three agree in one. So that's going to complete the class for today. Hope you brothers and sisters have a little bit better understanding on the Day of Atonement and how the afflictions play into that. And if you got any questions.
This is the word of the Lord of hosts. I took you from the pastures and from following the sheep to be prince over my people Israel. I have been with you where wherever you have gone, and have destroyed all the enemies in your path. I will make you a great name among the great ones of the earth. I will assign a place for my people in Israel. There I will plant them, and they shall dwell in their own land.